The MBR industry analysis template was inspired by the early research that was done by business schools, which often studied local industries in order to provide information of value to the business community that they served. The MBR industry analysis article is expected to describe some industry of practical importance and specify its boundaries. And these might be geographical, they might be conceptual, they might be around a product. In today's global environment, it's often very hard to bound the industry. Identify relevant sources of information related to that industry, such as local databases, government sources, private sources, and so forth. It should report the results of the analysis that the author has conducted and maybe present a summary of the key insights. And in the case of an industry analysis, you probably are going to want to speculate a little bit about the future as it's compared to the present. As with all MBR templates, we specify the criteria that reviewers should use in looking at the article. And for an industry analysis, these would include the degree of managerial interest in the industry that we're looking at, the range of stakeholders that might be interested in the article. This might include industry participants, customers, suppliers, regulators, the community at large, and so forth. The quality of the analysis being performed. We're looking for more than opinion. We're looking for something that's grounded in research ideas. The degree to which stakeholders are going to find what you report to be interesting or unexpected or something that they hadn't looked at. The degree to which any speculations you make about the future are more than just sort of a straight line trend for what has already been happening. What insights that you have that go beyond that of just projecting out the status quo. The degree to which any findings you offer might be applied by practitioners as opposed to just being something of interest. And of course, the presentation of findings in a way that engages readers. As with all the MBR templates, there's a series of instructions. You basically save the template under a new name and you'll delete the instructions page. Use titles and heading styles. Makes it much easier for us to take this thing into production. And of particular note is the reviewer appendix at the end of the template, which is really where you're going to convince the people who are reviewing your article that it was done in a rigorous way. This does not get included in the article itself, but is nevertheless very important in determining whether or not the article was done in a way that is rigorous. Another common element to MBR submissions is the cover page. And for industry analysis, what you're going to want to do is provide a tagline. And this is very important because it's going to be what is used on the cover of the journal when it's printed. It's going to be used on the website. It's going to be sent out over social media. So think of it as being like a Twitter post. It's got to be in the 25 to 50 word area and should really convince someone that there's information here that's worth looking at. You need some keywords. This is primarily for researchers so that they'll be able to find your article once it's on the web. And then an executive summary. And the executive summary is something that will be included in the article. And it's important to write this in an engaging way because your typical reader, if they're not interested by the executive summary, will read no further. Executive summary and conclusions, you both want to really capture that reader's attention. The body of the industry analysis is a little bit of a variation from some of the other templates. You probably want to begin by talking about the industry itself, what its boundaries are, why is it an interesting industry. You're welcome to use charts to do things like describe competitive positions, that sort of thing. You might want to go on and then talk about the stakeholders of the industry, competitors, suppliers, customers, and so forth. Once again, we want to understand what participants are going to be interested in your analysis. You would have a brief method section where you talk about how you gathered the data. And this should be very brief because in the reviewer appendix, you will provide much, much more detail. So all you're trying to do here is convince the reader that you were systematic in your investigation, not the reviewer who is interested in really digging into the rigor that you applied. You can then have a section of industry analysis, and you can use common tools such as SWOT, growth, share, so forth, or whatever tools you want. We're agnostic with respect to how you analyze the industry, as long as your industry analysis is interesting and seems to make sense. Presumably, you are going to want to have a discussion of the results of your analysis, and of particular emphasis here is what decisions might be made or actions might be taken as a result of your analysis. Your conclusions, like the executive summary, should be relatively self-contained because a lot of readers will jump from the executive summary to the conclusions, and unless both of those are of interest, they're not going to look at the body of the research. And of course, APA format should be used for all references that you use. When it comes to the reviewer appendix, what you're trying to do is convince the reviewer who is going to decide whether or not your article is worthy of publication that you have conducted your research in a rigorous fashion. Now, industry analysis is so broad, there's really no cookie-cutter way of determining if appropriate analysis was done. But you're probably going to want to give some background that identifies, why you decided to perform the analysis, why you chose this particular industry. You may then want to talk a little bit about the protocol that you used, the sort of research method. How did you identify data sources? What literatures did you use? Databases. Anything that isn't sort of self-explanatory within the body of the manuscript ought to be explained here. And then finally, you need to identify that you've received permission for everything you've used. This is particularly true with things like images and quotations. We want to make sure that we don't make any enemies by virtue of what we publish in the MBR.